What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Lumix Actually Live. Actually really stoked that we're back live instead of having a couple of the recorded sessions that we've done over the last couple of weeks. But I incredibly appreciate everyone that tuned into those broadcasts that submitted questions for us to answer. It was a lot of fun actually. Kind of shooting a lot of that stuff and actually kind of spending more time creating, supporting content to actually hopefully help get you guys maybe a little bit more answers on how some of this stuff works. And, you know, it's something I think I want to do a little bit more in the future. Maybe get some more questions, do some pre-recorded session parts of the sessions or segments where we can just click right into it, and then I can interact with everybody in the chat while kind of a more deep dive part of the video is playing. But outside of that, thank you all for joining. If you've never been to a LUMIX Live before, if this is the first time you're joining us, these are weekly broadcasts that we do outside of like the heavy holiday seasons. They're live broadcasts, and they are heavily dependent on your feedback and your input. While a lot of times I will do what I can to prepare a bunch of content, so we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about, because there's always things to talk about in the photo and video industry. Really, questions that all of you have are exactly why, I kind of created this. Why back 2 years ago, we wanted to create a platform for people to have a direct line of communication to someone here that actually represents Lumix, that works for the company. It's not third-party information. You're not hearing through somebody who thinks they know somebody, that kind of thing. So we are your basic source for the actual factual information about Panasonic Lumix within, obviously what we're allowed to talk about. So, like that, if you're new here and you have a question that you want me to answer, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras in the chat. This way it pops up on my side so I can see that it's a question. A lot of times we get a lot of just kind of back and forth conversation, which is awesome. I love seeing it. But yeah, if you have a direct question that you want me to try to answer, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras. So just type the at symbol, start typing Lumix, and you should see Lumix Cameras pop up so you can autofill it. And then go with your question. We've got a ton of things to talk about today. If you've read the description, we were originally supposed to be out at CES. So we were going to be doing this broadcast actually for 3 days straight, and we were going to be doing it from the actual trade show floor. But obviously, with the big influx with Omicron and the overwhelming decision to be much safer, we've decided not to physically be in attendance at the show. The risks are definitely not worth, kind of putting our employees into a situation like that. And more importantly, not putting any kind of person that would want to go out to the show to talk to us in person. There will be time for that in the future. Let's just get through this period, and then we'll be back to, a much more normalized, hopefully a much more normalized, kind of world. What else? Yes, so the original idea and topic of what we were going to be talking about today is actually a lot of the stuff that, has been announced at CES. So not just from Panasonic, but in general, a lot of the new technologies that are coming out. If anyone's been following the tech that's been coming out, there's a lot of really cool stuff that is going to be really relevant to all of what we do. So on the PC hardware side, on the display side, I wanted to take a minute to talk about that, because now is a lot of times where people may be looking at, upgrading monitors or wanting to upgrade their computer. I see a ton of these questions coming in over on the Facebook group. So we wanted to talk about some of this stuff. It's a passion of mine. PC building and display tech is something that I'm becoming more passionate about. So I wanted to share some of those with everybody and help maybe provide some information that we know how it can be relevant to all of you, and how to cut through some of the BS that you see in, as speaking as someone who is a marketer, cut through some of the BS of the stuff that really isn't that relevant to any of us, photographers, videographers, cinematographers. But before I do that, I need to get my water, because I left it back here, so give me 1 second. Gotta stay hydrated. I keep forgetting to do that. So, the first thing before we go into all of that, I want to set the record straight for everybody here. Obviously, as I've seen here, there are tons of questions about the GH6, or what has been affectionately called now in some locations, the camera that shall not be named. Obviously, everyone knows that we were talking about the GH6. Truthfully, there is not much information I can share with anybody at this point, other than it exists. I have seen it. I've actually played with it a little bit. It does exist, and you're not going to have to wait that much longer to find out information about it. I know that people are chomping at the bit to get the actual information about this camera. Believe me, those of us that work for the company and those of us that are involved with the LUMIX cameras, we are incredibly excited. We think, truthfully, that quality comes with time, and making sure it's done right is a very, very important thing. So the most I can say is bear with us a little bit longer. You're not going to have to wait that much longer. Like we said, it's coming before the spring, so you're not really going to have to wait that much longer. I know that has probably just ticked off a ton of people in the chat that are viewing. I understand your frustrations. Believe me, I feel your frustrations. I love this camera. I cannot wait for you guys to see it, and for us to be able to talk candidly and actually, see what everyone can create with it. So bear with us a little bit longer. It's going to be really cool. And as Sacred is saying, you don't care about the GH6, you want to hear about a GH7. Yeah, funny. It's always amazing. The second the 6 comes out, of course, the rumors are going to start about, a follow-up camera. That's just always how the industry goes, and we're always super excited about, how enthusiastic all of you are about the brand. Yeah, we just, really, really just hang on with us. I think it's going to be really, really exciting. So, let's see here. I'm going to jump through the chat real quick before I move on to my next kind of conversation here. Let's see here. Oh, yes. And by the way, I did drop a poll in the chat here. I'm going to change it in a little bit to another poll. But I'm just curious, of the people that are here that join us, that are typically watching here with Lumix Live, which OS do you typically tend to use primarily? It's one thing I didn't put in the question, but primarily, are you a Mac, a Windows, or a Linux user? Those that have followed along long enough know that I'm very heavily a PC user or a Windows user, but I'm very curious to see what the mix is within our group. I tend to think that we're going to lean pretty heavily into the Windows users. So let's see here. Other kind of questions. Herman Cortez, nice, you met at Cinegear. I apologize if I do not remember names that well. I'm a visual person. I like to see people's faces. But yes, Cinegear was such an awesome show, and I guess it was a little bit of a tease to be back out in the actual real world doing shows. I miss them tremendously. I miss being able to talk to all of you in person at these shows, and hopefully we will get back to those relatively shortly. Let's see here. Happy New Year from some. What do you think about the G7 in 2022? That's questions from YG. I think the G7 is still arguably one of the best valued cameras that you can pick up. It's often really inexpensive. It has solid 4K video. It has the ability to clean out video, so if you need just something that you can throw up as a simplified webcam, the thing's pretty solid for that. But it is on the older architecture, so you're not going to get all the bells and whistles of the modern cameras. Let's see here. Nico, when will an S1 replacement come out? Just like we talked with the GH6 and any future camera, even if I did know, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything. But yeah, just no news at this time. Talk about upgrading camera into a GH6. Not 100% sure what you mean there, if you give me a little bit of info. Glenn, I'm totally looking to upgrade to a more color accurate monitor for grading, and that's actually something that we are going to talk about. because as a follow-up with like Sacred's comment about Flanders Scientific monitors, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of displays that you can buy that are professional grade. They're a ton of money, but there are some really good options you can get outside of that if you're willing to give up some of the direct PC control kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Let's see here. Let's hear from DDS New Year. So the obvious question for the many of us who are primarily stills oriented, what about a G9 replacement that takes advantage of the new sensor tech? I think, truthfully, when you guys see what we've got coming out, when the GH6 is out, I think people are going to be really excited, both on the photography and the videography side. As you guys know, I am primarily a photographer, and I love where we're going with this camera. So hang tight. I don't have any information about the other cameras, but yeah, just hang tight and see what we've got coming down the pipeline. Let's see here. Where'd it go? Wow. Thank you, YouTube, for just jumping comments to the bottom. Thanks for the update. We know you're a tough spot. Can't wait to see the final specs. I really appreciate that. You guys know, if you've been following this thing, or following Lumix Live long enough, you know that I try to be as straight shooter as I possibly can. I would love to be able to give you guys more information. Just not ready to yet. So hang tight. I appreciate you guys hanging around, and believe me, I feel your frustrations as well. So, so here, Redbit, please consider to add internal ProRes and RAW formats in the next S line of cameras. Evolutions are always happening, and believe me, Matt, I mean, y'all have seen Matt too. I would love to have RAW video recording internally in the camera, but that's up to the engineering team. That's not up to me. So. I think it's Lynn, says, why is 24p not available for RAW recording? True 24 frame per second isn't, my understanding is true 24 frame per second isn't a frequency or a frame rate that transfers over typical HDMI cables, because televisions do not, in the HDMI standard, do not broadcast at 24 frames per second. They broadcast at 23,976. And you have to have a matching frame rate when you're doing the data for RAW. So I believe that's the answer. I could be slightly wrong on that. But that's typically what I've been told, why true 24 frame per second isn't over HDMI. Yeah, so let's see here. Can you talk generally about what you think about the future of Micro Four Thirds and what advantages it will still have as full frame cameras are getting smaller? Well, the biggest thing is really going to be in a lot of the tech that you don't necessarily see up front, right? So sensor architecture, sensor design, it is much faster to read out a smaller sensor than it is a larger sensor. As full frame cameras started becoming bigger and bigger and the video side started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, readout speeds have only recently started to get caught up to where Micro Four Thirds previous generation is. And I say previous generation because there's always new things coming. We've already said it. The GH6 is going to have a new sensor and a new processor. So tech gets better and better every time it's actually a new process. That's something where I think Micro Four Thirds is always going to have a lead ahead of the full frame options. There are other techs that get in there, and that's a very kind of nebulous way to answer it, but there are other ways to get around some of the speed, the actual physical readout speed for rolling shutter and stuff like that, or skew. But truthfully, with Micro Four Thirds, I think the biggest thing that's really going to continue to separate it is overall system size. Now, yes, Micro Four Thirds, when it first came out, was very big on the promise of smaller cameras because the sensor size is smaller, optics can be smaller, but as things evolve, more people adopt, it starts to build where you can actually start to push different areas and make them better and better. So cameras did get a little bit bigger. The GH5, notably, when that camera first came out, everyone was like, look at how gigantic this camera is. And it is a bigger in the Micro Four Thirds camera. However, Very rarely, even up until recently, are cameras that have larger sensors or even other cropped sensored cameras able to keep up with what a Micro Four Thirds sensor can do. So that system is going to have a very long life. We've got a lot of really cool stuff planned for it. And again, it goes back to the GH6. When that camera comes out and you guys get more information, I think you're going to be stoked at what it does and what it can mean for the Micro Four Thirds platform and how it will coexist and live in the long term with full frame and particularly with the S series. So, yeah. Let's see here. Thank you, YouTube, again. Is computational photography part of the Lumix future? It's already here. We already use computational information. We already use deep learning AI in things like the focusing system, in image recognition, things like live view composite, things like 4K photo. A lot of the post fixes that you can do would be considered computational because you're using processing to actually compile some of these images. I still think we're at the bleeding edge of what computational photography means, or computational additions mean to photography, to actual cameras. Things like, on-the-fly multi-exposure, stuff like that. All of these things are going to eventually build over time. Similar to what our phones do and stuff like that. So it's always definitely a part of the future of the cameras. Some of these things are already starting to be seen in cameras. Yeah, we're just still at the very early edge of it. John, I'm looking at a GH5 Mark II. Thoughts on waiting for the GH6 versus picking up a GH5 Mark II? I am always a person that advocates for buying what you need. If you have work right now and you are missing work because you don't have a camera, buy the camera that's going to get the work. If you're doing enough work, you'll probably pay off or pay for the equipment that you're buying within a couple of jobs. And then when the next camera comes out, or the one that you're really looking forward to, you've got jobs lined up, hopefully. Hopefully you're in a position where you've got work, like that kind of stuff. And you'd be able to actually, kind of really be able to move up through the equipment. The GH5 Mark II, if you check out any of the independent users out there, it's an incredible step up over the original GH5. It has a lot of modern tech updates in it that really adjust the usability for it. Yeah. Let's see here. Michael asks, are you planning a new Super Tele for Micro Four Thirds? Maybe something in the form of a 400 f4 or an f4.5. Truthfully, I haven't looked at our Micro Four Thirds lens roadmap. So honestly, I'm not sure. The nice thing with Micro Four Thirds is just how ridiculously large the lens selection is, not just from first party or from main manufacturer across the board. So there are a ton of options. But that's something that, I would pass over to our team and let them know that there's interest in a 400 f4 or 4.5. Okay, let's see here. All right, let's talk about some of the things that I had kind of prearranged here to talk about, as we were saying about, displays and computer hardware, because there's a lot of, I think, confusion that is going to be brought up very soon for anyone looking at, supporting equipment for your editing process or stuff like that. When we go to, let's see here. All right, so a couple of the cool things that got announced at CES, if everyone's been following it, are a lot of displays, TVs, computer monitors, things like that. A lot of that stuff has been really, really accelerated in the last 3 days. Even from Panasonic here, unfortunately, if you're in the United States, this doesn't really apply to us as much as I would love for this to apply to the U.S. market. A lot of our European friends, our overseas friends, this is going to be a little more relevant to you, at least with the Panasonic product. We did announce our LZ2000 OLED TV, and the reason I bring this up, and this, just to give everybody a heads up, the reason I'm talking about TVs is that the tech in a lot of the TVs are starting to actually have features that are good for PC users or for computer editors. That is why we're talking about it. A lot of times, if you look now, people are starting to use televisions as computer displays because of, the HDR functionality. In a lot of cases, also the much better color accuracy when you start getting into the higher end stuff. So that's why we're talking about it. So, like we say, we launched the LZ2000 TV. And what's cool about this one, specifically for people like us in the photo video industry, a lot of times, we need either a reference monitor, something that, if you're going to be shooting and color grading and going through all the effort to create your content, you want to get something that can actually, show you how that content's going to look and have a good reference point for it. And with OLEDs becoming even bigger and bigger this year, they're starting to get into a much more cost-effective price point. That's where you start getting to this. So we make a couple different sizes of it, 55, 65, and 75. 77. The thing where this is super important for our side is that you're starting to see things like the NVIDIA G-Sync added into a lot of these things, AMD FreeSync Premium, stuff like that. You're starting to see modes that are actually designed for being used with the computer, especially in OLED monitors. OLED monitors, or TVs, if you've looked at them, you know that you run into the risk of burn-in and stuff like that. So you want to try to get something where, you're not really going to destroy the TV by using a computer with it, but you can still actually use it as a multimedia device. So, with our newest gen, the LZ2000, we've got full HDMI 2.1 compatibility. So if you've been following HDMI, you know that there's a whole headache in what HDMI 2.1 means these days. We've got the new mode here. It's got a lot of the extra stuff, so if you do want to use it as a regular TV, you can. But from our side, color accuracy, using something like this as a reference monitor can be a good way to get yourself into something that is really high quality, that's going to get you that OLED panel, so you're going to get the true deep blacks, all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to go out and necessarily buy something like a Flanders Scientific or some of the really high-end, expensive actual production monitors, and still be able to use it for other things too, and have standardized inputs, so HDMI in. So these can be a really cool option. This is, like I said, this is the one that we launched. Again, unfortunately, if you're in the U.S. market, it's not something for the U.S. market. We don't sell televisions here in the U.S. anymore. So, yeah. But if you're overseas, this could be a really, really cool option to take a look at. So, outside of that, there's also the new tech called QD OLED. I've already gotten a couple of people asking me questions about this. Not here in the chat, but there's been some stuff that I've gotten questions about working with a couple people that are setting up new systems. QD OLED, if you've looked at it, it is a newer tech coming out. I believe Samsung is the first flat panel company to release it. There's a lot of cool stuff about it, but the word of caution that everyone basically should have if you're in the market looking for these new displays. There's still OLED panel underneath. It's a blue OLED light. And then it shoots up through the quantum dot to create the different colors. But there's still, none of the companies are giving you what the potential is for burn-in, what the longevity of these panels are. So if you're someone looking into this stuff, do a lot of research on it. There are actual computer monitors now, actually one from Alienware that releases this, that you want to definitely take a look at. Just to give a heads up to a couple of people in the chat. So I think it's Ogo and Nico. If you read the description of the event, we were talking about CES tech, how it can be related to LUMIX cameras. So yes, it's LUMIX cameras, but also we're talking about all of the things that we do and we interact with in our cameras. We have cameras that push the tech, your actual shooting side of the tech, very, very far. So a lot of the HDR functionality, a lot of the 422 10-bit, all that stuff. A lot of times, everyone kind of forgets about the actual viewing and the displaying of your content. What are your targets that you're shooting towards? So we wanted to take a little bit of time and actually talk about some of those things, because it's one thing to have a camera that can create or enable you to create some amazing looking content. But if you don't have the right equipment to be showing it or grading it, how do you know that that content's actually being created properly for the outputs that you're trying to show it on? So we wanted to talk about some of this stuff. And as we said before, if you're here looking about the GH6, like I said before, I don't have any real new information to tell you other than it's going to be coming to, it's going to be coming out before spring. It exists. I've seen it. I've had hands-on with it. It does exist. I'm really excited about it, and I know everyone's going to be really excited when it actually comes out. So bear with it a little bit longer. You're not going to have to wait much longer for the actual information about it. Yeah, so let's see here. I saw a couple other questions come through while we were talking about that stuff. What's the name of the monitor for the BGH1 camera? There's a couple different monitors that you can use. The Portkeys BM5WR allows you to have full menu control. So it plugs USB into the BGH1. And that'll let you have full menu control over it. And I think there's a new firmware update that came out for that monitor as well too. So there's some pretty cool stuff. Let's see here. Carbon says, when is the BS1H coming out? It is out. I do know that we are shipping them. That usually at that point just comes down to whether or not your dealer has ordered them or has enough stock of them. Back up through here. Exploring Norway. How many GH6 prototypes have there been around? I couldn't tell you even if I wanted to. And even if I know, I wouldn't tell you. Let's see here. Will we ever see Capture One tether compatibility with the LUMIX S cameras? The more of you that go and request it from Capture One, the higher the probability is. As a reminder, when we released the BGH1 and the BS1H, we made the control protocols public. Anybody can download them and integrate them into your own software, and actually has all the information you need for tether control. So the information's out there. If it's something that you really want, obviously I make my communications. I do reach out and I do express that we have people that are asking about it. Reach out to the company yourself too. The more people that ask, the more you'll be able to get that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Andrew, Sean is going to find NDA contracts of all NDA contracts. Yes. Working for the company does mean that, I can't say anything or I get fired. But yes, it does exist. I've had hands-on with it. It does exist. Let's see here. Will we see firmware updates for the G9? Still a huge fan. Don't know if we have... I don't know if I've seen anything on plans. So honestly not sure, but I wouldn't take that as like gospel. There are so many different moving parts when it comes to the cameras across the board. We don't always remember every little thing that, we talk about and we see. But if you have, like we've said always, if you've got things that you want to see in these cameras, always let us know, because that gives our engineers things to look at to see what is feasible to do in a camera. A lot of times, as you see more and more cool pieces of tech come out, they may not necessarily always be physically able to be done into cameras. So, yeah, I don't know if we're going to see another firmware update for the G9, but that doesn't mean that we won't. Llama, 24-bit audio internal. Oh, okay, that's a request. Yeah, I mean, I know that we have... The XLR1 allows you to do 24-bit audio. I'd love to see it internally. That'd be pretty cool. Let's see here. Can you give a rough explanation of why the GH6 is taking so long? Quality. Making sure that it does what you would expect it to do. And making sure that it's a finished product. Yes, we do release products and we have future firmware update plans, but there's always targets that you hit. So I can't really go into much more details about that. If you take a look at the global site for the GH6, we do have a comment up, I believe it's up there, about that it's coming, making sure that it is going to be what you want and what we target for the camera. So yeah, just hang in there a little bit longer. Let's see here. Working when setting up. Here we go. Okay, here we go. My wish. This is from Ulrich, who I know is usually watching in here, and I think I saw you over on the Panasonic press conference too. So let's see here. My wish is it more. My wish monitor specs are a 32-inch 4K HDR 144 hertz. Is that it's possible but money. So what's kind of funny about that is actually one of the things that I did want to actually talk about here, because and for those that don't want to hear about TVs, I'm going to talk about TVs for a little bit and computer monitors to answer this question. This is probably one of the things that actually caught my eye the most during the press conferences was what ROG or Asus released here. So it's not a 32-inch, it's a 42-inch, so it is still sizably bigger. I mean, I use a 48-inch display here that's an OLED panel. It's a 42-inch, so it's technically, I believe now, the smallest OLED panel for computers. But it gets the important thing for a lot of us when we start looking at things like color accuracy and refresh rates and stuff. It's 4K, it's true 10-bit. You get all of the OLED advantages, so it's OLED. You're going to get inky blacks and ultra bright whites and infinite contrast, all of that sales pitchy stuff about OLED. But what's more important to me is that you're getting color accuracy values of less than delta E, a delta E value of less than 2 out of the box. So your color accuracy is going to be much, much better. Now, as a reference, I got one of these to actually use on the go. I don't know if anyone has seen these kinds of things. So this is an Asus ProArt. Tiny little 1080p monitor, but it's got a really, really highly calibrated display on it. Powers off USB, takes an HDMI signal in, has a 1/4 tripod socket on the bottom. So if I need a true 709 color accurate display, now this one's only 709, they make an HDR one. If you need a true color accurate display, this can be a pretty solid option that you can travel with and make sure you've got something that's actually calibrated to be 709. So something cool to take a look at. But yeah, so Ulrich, that ROG monitor is something that actually I'm kind of excited about. I'm looking at to see if it could be something nice to add into the system if its color accuracy values are as good as they're saying they are. My past experience with Asus has been pretty good. The monitor thing that I'm using here, it's one of their ProArt series, so it's an Asus product, and actually vast majority of my PC is now Asus as I changed a whole bunch of stuff. So, or Asus, however you want to pronounce it. Let's see here. Any comment on phase detect versus contrast? They're two different autofocus systems. Is that what you're looking for, Henry? I think we all know that. No, but phase detect's cool. Contrast is more accurate. Just depends. Different uses, different styles, and different ways of implementing autofocus. Let's see here. G9 with live composite is on your Xmas list. Fair point. Full frame LUMIX are okay. Can we live with you until we get up on our Llama City? Okay, that's Llama City. Okay. Hoping for some S1H updates as well. Is there an S1H version 2 coming out? If I had more info, I would happily tell you. I just don't. Windows is winning the poll. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Holy crap. Yes, Windows is definitely winning the poll. So a lot of people are Windows users. Let me actually end this poll real quick because I want to ask a different poll here. So we're going to drop a different poll in for everybody while we're doing this. Here. Now, this is not too fan flames for the PC users out there, or I mean, honestly, even the AMD or the Linux users out there. Uh, but are you AMD or Intel? That could be. That's actually one of the things that I do want to talk about, because I do know we have a lot of AMD users here, and we do have a lot of Intel users here. And there's actually a safety thing I want to talk about for people who may not actually be following enough about it. Let's see here. Dennis, about OLED. OLED, especially the LG King with their 3D LUT support, are fantastic for color accuracy and SDR, and not too far off reference monitors. HDR and gamut volume and bright tone is lacking. Yeah, so, you know, as you start looking at some of these things, you do want to start paying attention to the panels. Now, for OLEDs, yeah, it basically is LG makes the vast majority of the OLED panels out there, but you know, look at the calibrated ones. When you start looking at the really high-end ones, studio reference monitors, that's where you're going to be able to get something that is still going to be less than typically a reference monitor, or traditionally that we think, but still have like the basic usability of a TV. So let's see here. Interesting. This is so far a lot closer than I thought it would be, Intel versus AMD. And I'll go into why I'm bringing that up in a little bit. Let's see here. YouTube chat just keeps like jumping a whole bunch down as I'm going through. Noxstrom, super thrilled with my BGH1 since I got it. Have filmed a lot. Is there a BGH2 following GH6? Considering the BGH1 is, a little over a year old, I think we're still a little early for that conversation. But what I can tell you is that the box cameras are incredibly popular sellers for us. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see us iterate on those in the future. I love the box cameras. I've got 1, 2, 3. I think I've got 4 of them around here. And they're phenomenal cameras for multi-camera angle. Even for regular filming, they're a lot of fun. So let's see here. Okay, so yeah, so that was super thrilled. Could you explain a little bit about luminance level setting in LUMIX cameras? Why is the default 16 to 255 and not 16 to 235 like the so-called legalization? Well, in a lot of cases, 16 to 255, I believe it's default to the larger of the ranges, mainly because, well, actually, I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to ask Matt about that one. But I do know that that's why we offer all the different modes in most of the cameras. Not all of the cameras. The S series and higher end cameras and G series, you have the option to go in and you can change the luminance level values. We talked about it a little bit last week in the recorded session. But yeah, there are, with a lot of the cameras, I mean, they used to just be set at 0 to 255 as the default because it's just the maximum amount of color, the maximum amount of luminance range, and that's just what the cameras were set up to. If you shoot and capture in the smaller ranges and you need to go back out to the higher range, then it's kind of gone. So, yeah, it's kind of just, you know, look at the different modes, the shooting scenario that you're in. Once you set it, it's going to stay there, so you don't have to worry about it, you know, resetting after you restart the camera or anything like that. So, yeah, there's not... Best guess is just that 0 to 255 and 16 to 255 are just the default because they're just the default. Max, what will the GH6 have over the kind of other more expensive, larger censored camera? Don't have an answer for you because I can't give you any more information about the camera in the specs. Let's see here. When setting up constant preview on my S5, I'm still unsure what preview while MF assist does. Could you shed some light on that? That question comes from Jake. Yeah, so preview while MF assist means that if you're using picture-in-picture or you're using the manual focus assist, where it does punch in, especially for still shooting, it will still keep the constant preview. In a lot of times, and in the earlier iterations of our kind of preview system, when you would go to manual focus, it would open the lens up wide to get the most amount of light in, to help you just visually be able to manually focus. Preview while MF assist means that it's just going to keep the constant preview settings. So if you're in a really dark environment and you go manual focus with constant preview and MF assist turned on, it's going to stay the way that you're viewing it. If you turn that off and you go to manually focus, you may see the image get really bright so you can focus. And then when you come out of that, it'll dark back down into the standard kind of view here. Let's see here. Sacred City, Team Red or Blue, Ryzen all the way. Yeah, Ryzen's, it's definitely why I'm asking that question here. So it's still a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. Let's see here. How popular was timecode in the S1H? I love that option. Timecode is one of the critical pieces of that, in that camera. And actually the higher end cameras. Having a proper ability to do timecode versus the kind of like weird ways that other cameras do it, is an important thing for a lot of the bulk users that are purchasing box cameras and S1Hs and BS1Hs, stuff like that. Let's see here. Water-cooled PCs are dinosaurs. Well, I mean, I guess that's like your opinion, man. You want an Nico wants an S1 Mark II or an S2. Yeah. How about a poll of AMD versus everyone else? Adobe versus everyone else? Yeah, I'm planning on asking that one in a little bit too. What are the questions we got here? G9 requesting shutter angle. Didn't the G9 get shutter angle? I thought the G9 got shutter angle. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna get my G9 now. I know my G9's around here somewhere. Let's see. Alright, so I got my G9 here. Go into video. You can see with the amount of cameras that I have to work with on a daily basis, do not be surprised if I just make a mistake and don't realize that something doesn't exist in one of the cameras. Yeah, okay. Yeah, G9 doesn't have shutter angle. Well, we can ask for it. G9 did get a ton of video feature updates. So yeah. Let's see here. Nico, please poll about cameras are more appropriate, for example, flip versus tilt screens. If I asked, or if I put anything in there about flip or tilt screens, it will be a 50-50 response. But yeah. Let's see here. BS1H, 4K 60p 422 10-bit available. The BS1H offers the maximum value of going to 6K 24. You've got, so 4K 60p is going to be Super 35 region, and you're going to have a maximum of 420 10-bit. Yeah, so it's going to be 420 10-bit. That's going to be an HEVC file, which is the reason why you're going to actually prefer to have 420 10-bit if you're doing HEVC compression, because most computers can't hardware accelerate 422 10-bit in HEVC compression. You would spend infinitely longer trying to work with those files for the subtle gain of 422 versus 420 with that compression. So let's see here. One feature I'd like to see in the future of GH cameras is using smartphones as a tethered field monitor with the USB 3. It should be possible. So you can kind of already start to do that with the GH5 Mark II. The recent firmware update that we produced for that camera that added the USB tethering functionality now also lets you connect your mobile device to the camera over USB. Now that's primarily designed as a use for tethering and broadcasting out of it, but you have access to the app, so you've got a little bit there. Tethering field monitor, it's definitely something that I know we've talked about to engineers before, wanting to make either a version of the app or a mode in the app that is basically just a field monitor. that allows you to have some, the basic tools and the controls that you would need for some editing. But I think some of it may depend on next gen USB-C inputs or outputs on the cameras. So it is something that we'll definitely be pushing with our team to see what they can do. Let's see here. Big Lebowski's a great movie. I'm glad someone got the reference here. Let's see here. Noxstrom. I use timecode on my BGH1 a lot to sync sound with external recorders and other cameras. BGH1 generates timecode, and BGH1 also generates timecode and also can sync. Do you mean BS1H? Yeah, because the BGH1 and the BS1H and cameras like the GH5S and the S1H, they can do they can accept timecode and they can sync timecode. So you've got a lot of back and forth capabilities with it. Yeah. Let's see here. Difference between the S1H and a BS1H. Shape, design, I/O primarily, and stabilizer. The BS1H is basically an S1H put into a more production-ready platform. So if you think of a situation where you want to be able to mount a camera and you want to be able to remote access it, a lot of times in those cases, one, you're not going to need a rear screen on the camera. You're probably not going to need a viewfinder. Excuse me. So that's where the BS1H is really going to have a big advantage there. You also have things like SDI, you've got timecode, you've got Genlock, you've got power over Ethernet and control over Ethernet. While still having that full-size HDMI, you still have USB-C for either if you want to connect to the camera and transfer that way, dual SD cards. Think of it as like a sister camera to the S1H. Different platforms, different styles, different times you'd want to use one camera over the other. And even in situations where, say you want to work with maybe a smaller gimbal, the box camera is going to balance a lot easier on a gimbal than an S1H will. You have a much smaller package. If you're someone who does a lot of things with like flying drones, the box camera can be a much easier platform to work with on things like a drone than a traditional mirrorless designed camera. So that's kind of one of the big differences and kind of reasons you'll see the difference there between an S1H and a BS1H. So, let's see here. What other questions do we see here? Is there a way to turn off timecode so none is in the file? Turn timecode off in the camera. Let's see here. Intel and AMD are from where? Not sure I'm following, Llama. All right, so let's end that poll real quick. That one ended about as much as I thought it would. Now, where was Nico? Just for you, Nico. I'm going to, once this lets me do this, tilt or flip. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me do this. Tilt, flip, or S1H style screen. S1H style screen. There we go. Just for Nico. We've got a poll set up now for Nico on which of the rear screen designs you prefer over the others. Obviously, I kind of think I know how this one's going to go out, but I wanted to throw that S1H style screen in there just to see if that alters some of the differences there. The flip tilt war has begun. I guess I started it, you know? I had to. Although S1H style screen is winning so far with 2 votes. I'll take it. Well, nope, not anymore. Anyway. Let's see here. Difference between GH5 Mark II and the GH6. I can't. I can't give you any more info about the GH6, so I don't have that kind of info to give you a good, kind of comparison between the two. So, let's see here. So while we go into the next thing, and the reason why I wanted to ask, why I'm changing this a little bit from our normal camera conversation a bit is because, a lot of us are into multiple different things. Yes, we want to know about the cameras. Yes, we want to know about, lenses and stuff like that. But there's a lot of other news out there that, as I've been following, I'm willing to bet not everyone's actually kind of heard or seen some of the news out there. But when we look at the AMD and Intel switch here, we've got 57% use Intel and 42% use AMD. So what I'm curious about is how many of you that are on the Intel platform have updated to things like the 12th gen, or what is that, Alder Lake processors. And, we talked about before how, I have a lot of Asus equipment in my computer, so I use a lot of the Asus stuff here. So I wanted to make sure, because I do know a couple people that have, at least in the communications I've had over on the Facebook groups for the LUMIX cameras, that are using Alder Lake and have spent all the money on the new equipment. If you haven't seen this already, there was the Maximus Z690 Hero motherboard, which is for the newest gen or latest gen Intel processors, does have an issue. So if you are someone using that, I will drop this link in the chat. You definitely want to kind of keep an eye on this, make sure what's going on. There is a potential fire hazard, but Asus was taking care of it. So make sure to go take a look at that if you're using the Intel platform. But aside from that, AMD made a couple really cool announcements. Obviously, with the world of laptops, if you're in the laptop side of the industry and you're not using a Mac, I mean, Windows. What did Windows end up with on our poll here? I think Windows was pretty far ahead. Yeah, 54% of you are using Windows-based computers. There's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Obviously, graphics cards that all help us with our production in the backside of this. So, the cameras are cool, getting all that stuff's fun. But, being able to actually edit the footage and edit the video that we're working with, if you can do anything to make that process easier and faster, that could be kind of an important thing to keep an eye on. Graphics cards, if you've been following them, it's a nightmare in the world right now, aside from just technology. The world is in a nightmare situation. But with the laptops, you've got a cool section of things to be looking at right now. You've got the Intel chip laptops, which have come out a little while ago because they made their announcement before CES. But now you've also got AMD's release here. They've got the 6000 series laptops and the 6000 series processors with the new GPUs. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I kind of bring up to some people here, because again, I see a lot of these questions and a lot of times they don't really get the answers that people would expect, kind of expect to see here. There are a ton of new mobile GPUs for AMD. Things like the 6850M XT, which is their top tier in mobile GPU. And then less and less. So you start looking at, one, if you're on Windows already, figure out which platform you want to go on. Both AMD and NVIDIA have their whole creator solution now. So where was that? They have the whole AMD Advantage laptops. So you can start looking at there and see which companies are going to be getting you, kind of the full package. ROG, HP, Lenovo, MSI, all these different companies are making them. You want to start looking at, what the cache is on the processor. Make sure you're getting the right GPU for it. And if you're in the market to buy one right now, wait a couple of weeks. All of these new ones, it's CES time. Now's a good time to buy tech if you're good with the previous generation. You usually find some really cool deals. But you're going to start seeing that the new stuff's coming out real soon. Dennis saying, just going to 11th gen 3080 now, since I need a new laptop at the moment, which is available and doesn't cost a fortune. My experience with AMD was quite disappointing with PCI Gen 3x16 GPUs. 3x8. So, like Dennis, I think one of the things to look at would be the newer 6000 series, because now they've built in a lot of the different changes to, one, make laptops actually more useful for people like us that are doing video editing and processing and stuff like that. Um, I guess what's always kind of annoying is a lot of times these companies only talk gaming, which obviously gaming is what sells the vast majority of this stuff. But a lot of the benefits that they put in some of these things actually do support a lot of us. So, um, while, yes, they are very heavily pushing to support gaming, we still see a ton of positive benefits for all of our use cases. Um, FC, are the Intel or AMD GPU focused on gaming or more support for video codecs, such as H.265 4K or 8K video, H.264 4K or 8K video? I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if I can find it quickly, but AMD does, or not AMD, NVIDIA does list an entire spreadsheet that talks about how it actually lists out what codecs and compressions are supported for video encode and decode. When you get to, is it the new Radeon? One of these new ones here. So yeah, here, let me go to this. So this is AMD's 6500 XT, which is it's an entry-level card, not really necessarily something I think that we're going to really be massively pushing on. This card, if you look, they're actually calling out 4K H.264 decode, which just means that it can play it. H.264 encode is a no, so you're not really going to be able to have that much support for things like Premiere for this. H.265 decode, yes, but no encode. So things to look at there means that if you're working with things like Premiere and you want to be able to export out, you're going to have to, it's going to get kicked over to your CPU. You're not going to be able to utilize your GPU for that. Some NVIDIA graphics cards do support that. You do have a whole bunch of support on that side. NVIDIA does have an entire list for it. I haven't seen the same thing for AMD, but it may exist. Intel or not really sure about Intel GPUs yet, FC. M1 Max. Oh, okay, yeah, from Glenn. That's one of the other nice things too. So, obviously we're talking a lot about PC side here. If you're someone already on like the M1 or Apple's NVIDIA, Intel laptops, like I have my work computers, Apple iMac or MacBook. They have some really nice native integration to help you with video editing and working with the files that all of us create. Let's see here. The ProRes accelerators of the M1 is a game changer, fastest video editing machine I've ever used, coming from a guy who used to build your own PCs. Yeah, the other nice, I guess kind of advantage there too is ProRes is Apple's property. So is ProRes RAW. So, obviously you're going to have some pretty solid, kind of performance in there. Let's see here. I hate when AMD or Intel lacks some video codec support. Yeah, a lot of it, start looking at with your different levels. The really high-end cards typically are on par with each other. Things 6900 XT and, 3080, 3090, the whole new 3090 Ti that exists but doesn't exist and probably won't exist. That's where you start looking at, they're all going to be pretty much close on the same support level, but accelerate in different areas. I'm running NVIDIA graphics cards here. I've got a 3070 in my main editing machine and a 2080 Ti in my stream machine. And if you're someone who does broadcasting or streaming like this, this is where I will definitely say the NVIDIA stuff is going to give you a little bit of a boost over the AMD, because you've got the NVENC encoder. It's been a long time since I've used AMD for that, so I don't know if they support it. Let's see here. iMac face detection real-time AF available in the BGH1? Question mark. Face detect is available in the BGH1, the BS1H. It's a little more complicated to get to it in the menus because the camera doesn't have a built-in screen, so you do need an external monitor. or you can use the multicam, or not multicam software. I keep calling it multicam software, but it's not that anymore. You would use the LUMIX Tether 2.0 software for it. And that would let you change your focus modes, things like that. Let's see here. Sacred City, what's the best card for bit mining? I want to buy the GH6 with crypto. Do you guys accept Dogecoin? No. And will the GH6 come with an NFT? See, this is what I like. I like when every once in a while we can get into, the kind of memification of streams and conversations. There's no reason to always be so serious these days. So let's see here. All right, crazy results on the poll. Tilt is only 11% of you. Flip is 44%, and the S1H screen is 46%. Really not surprised too much about the S1H screen, but definitely surprised about that tilt screen. Usually these are 50-50 in pretty much everywhere else you look. Let's see here. Noxstrom shoots with a BGH1. Autofocus is very good. It can detect faces. I map it to a button to switch modes. So yeah, that is one of the other nice things that you can do with the box cameras. You have a lot more customizability in being able to just click a button and have it work that way. So let's see here. Let's see, how are we doing on time? All right, well, we're at 2 o'clock already. So let me just go through my show notes here, make sure I got through the things that actually I kind of wanted to get to. Yeah, actually looks about it. At least that was worth getting into on the stream. Like I said, this was a very different different type of stream. We're easing back into being able to have, our normal kind of broadcast. Wanted to take time, since it's like the tech holiday seasons with CES, and the fact that we weren't going to be there anymore, even though we planned to. I wanted to just, kind of talk about some other things, not just about the cameras. We are going to be back live next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be back to our normal. We're going to talk about cameras. So you want to actually join us and talk about cameras, then yes, we'll be doing that 99% next week. I appreciate those of you that hung around and actually joined in on the conversation about the PC side and stuff. It's a lot of fun to talk about these things and kind of, actually have conversations with other people here. What was that question? Did Panasonic announce battery tech? Panasonic did announce, did we announce battery tech? I know we showed off new batteries, not at CES, but before that. Those that don't know, Panasonic, we're one of the largest battery manufacturers too, so we also have a whole bunch of that stuff. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, so as I was saying, we are going to be back next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Like I said, these are live, as you've all experienced here. So as you ask your questions, I'll answer them. Whether it's on a topic about the tech that we were talking about here, if it's about cameras, lenses, anything like that, we're always around to be answering them during these streams. So you get to ask and learn, what you want to learn out of these things. I may not be able to get to all the questions, so I apologize if I didn't get to your question. But before we wrap up, I just want to let everybody know about the LUMIX Pro services. We have 2 tiers here in the United States, Platinum and Red. Red is the free membership, so if you've just recently got a camera or you have recently given a camera to somebody, make sure to follow the QR code. If you're here in the United States, follow the QR code to get over to LUMIX Pro Service Red. Get yourself registered. It's free. If you are looking to do Platinum and you want to get a little bit better protection on your equipment, you can follow the same link, register for Platinum, or you can register in for Red and then eventually upgrade to Platinum if you would like. Platinum gets you a lot of extra benefits, 20% off warranty repairs, so if your camera's dropped or broken, something like that, you get a discount on the repairs. You get the 3-year warranty just like the Red membership. You get annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates. You get a member's hotline, so you can talk to us directly. And you get faster turnaround times on repairs. So that can definitely be a nice advantage if you're someone out there working. We're coming up on a time where I think a lot of people may have the opportunity to be able to send their cameras in to get serviced before you start back up for the season. But yeah, outside of that, I think that covered everything. Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining and tuning in and all your awesome questions. I do look forward to talking to everybody next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And remember, the GH6 is real. It is coming. It will be here. You'll have information before the spring. So definitely keep tuned in. Keep following us on all different platforms. If you don't already, go over, follow us over on Instagram. Links are down in the description. And yeah, we will see everybody next week, Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Take care, everybody.